Um, so first, I wanted to tell you that I'm speaking on behalf of my colleague Michaela Parker, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Data Science and AI, otherwise known as ADSA. She couldn't be here today. She sends her regrets, and it's sort of my privilege to be able to stand in for her in this role. And I'll explain to you a little bit about how I'm engaged with ADSA in just a couple of slides. First, let me just get out of the way some introductions about me. So, I'm the Chief Data Officer for Jefferson Laboratory, which is one of the 17 national laboratories owned and operated by the Department of Energy. We are one of the newer labs. We are primarily focused on nuclear physics. It was founded about 40 years ago as a scientific user facility, as an experimental facility in nuclear physics. We still run this facility. It's called CBAF. It's the Continuous Electron Beam Accelerator Facility. In addition, the laboratory was recently awarded the lead role in developing the high performance data facility. So that's the sort of little icon image on the in the top of the page here. And so I was sort of hired as part of this transition in the laboratory to really focus on data science and make data science its sort of second pillar of its mission space. And the laboratory is really going through a very exciting time now where it's, you know, really sort of broadening its mission and the expertise that it brings to the department through data science, and also really leveraging the amazing work that the nuclear physics community can bring to that effort. Personally, as I mentioned, I'm relatively new to the laboratory. I've been there just over a year. Most of my career was in the federal government, so I worked as a Fed and a program officer in the Department of Energy and at NIH. And so now I'm sort of thrilled to be back in the DOE space and engaging with many of my colleagues here at NSF. So now let me focus, as I will for the rest of the talk, on ADSA. ADSA is a relatively new professional society. It was sort of born out of a need from the academic community for all of these new sort of data science schools and institutes that were being developed at universities, and they felt like they needed a forum to come together. In fact, this was sort of, I feel like this was a very important space in the ecosystem that ADSA fills in bringing these communities together. So it has most of its membership is around the academic community, and you can see here this is a sort of slide of the members. It has institutional membership, so it has about 70 members, and you can see them here. They're kind of all different types of academic institutions. And I think one of the things that I'm interested to do, and that ADSA is also interested, is to broaden out from academia into other types of research organizations like national laboratories, sort of recognizing our role not only in the workforce pipeline, but in the sort of landscape of research institutions for data science. I want to make sure that I give kudos to the ADSA staff. It's a pretty lean and mean organization, and Michaela Parker, who was the invited speaker for today, is on the left-hand side there, and I have her contact information at the end of this talk, so you should please feel free to reach out to her with any questions. The other point of this slide is just to say that although ADSA is a relatively new organization on its own, it brings together institutions that have, long histories in data science and related activities like, like computer science and mathematics and statistics. There are a number of people who I think are passionate about the role that ADSA plays in the community. And I'm just going to flash up here a couple of slides of some of us, I count myself among them, who are willingly dedicating our time to making sure that ADSA is successful, because we think it's so important to have this national scale coordination and strategy around data science. And so these are the members of the board for ADSA. We also have ADSA champions. So these are people who kind of evangelize for this sort of kind of, the services and the expertise that ADSA can bring, as well as some previous board members who are, maybe no longer in the board, but still very much active in our community. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about ADSA's reach. So in other words, what is the value of having this sort of central venue and central coordinating body? And one of the values is because it helps provide this sort of belly button to many different types of expertise and organizations. So here you can see the types of different institutional members, so not just R1 schools, but also minority serving institutions, international institutions, liberal arts colleges, and the number of students that we reach sort of through that network, both graduate and undergraduate. Another way to look at ADSA's reach is to look at the geographical spread. So this is not the membership, but this is rather the participation in a leadership summit that ADSA runs every year, which I'll talk about in just a second. And this just shows the sort of geographical spread, even for such a very young organization. I think that this is pretty impressive, and it does feel like you're touching a good part of the country this way. Another way to look at the sort of the reach that ADSA provides is looking at the different domains. And this again is sort of the self-chosen domain expertise of people who are participating in the Leadership Summit. They could pick more than one. But you see there's a broad range of domains on the left-hand side here, and then even within the sort of science bucket, a number of different scientific domains that are represented. So you can think about this in a very sort of organizational way, like the ADSA membership and community touches many different departments at each of the universities. So even though, it was focused really on these data science departments and schools, those institutions themselves have reach into many different departments and domains. Now I want to talk to you about sort of ADSA as a convener and how ADSA brings people together and institutions together. One way is the Data Science and AI Leadership Summit that they hold every year, and this is sort of more for like the executives or the leaders of these data science institutes, and they, I think they spend a lot of the good few years talking about things like how are we earning money, how are we surviving, how can we sort of make ourselves more sustainable in this university ecosystem, and now I think they're thinking more strategically about things like where can we come together about understanding the sort of core competencies of data science and where can we work together to really understand how our different programs complement each other. So this is a really wonderful venue. They also have held annual meetings. They haven't been annual recently just because of lack of funding, but this is a really awesome experience, I think, for people. It's a pretty large conference, and students can attend, and so there's talks and presentations and opportunities for students to get involved. And this is something that, speaking on behalf of Michaela and also from the perspective of the board, we would love to start up again if we had resources. And here's an example of also the way that ADSA can play this connector role. So this came out of a discussion, I think, in one of the leadership summits around how to help students transition from two-year colleges to four-year institutions and building those ramps and pathways. And so this started out as a conversation and ended up as a joint paper. And I know that there's sort of ongoing conversations and work around this topic of thinking about, that sort of, development path for many students and how to make that more seamless. This is just another example of sort of the discussions that can happen at an annual meeting and the sorts of presenters that we have, really thinking about these broad strategic questions in data science. And so this one happens to be around ethics. But this is the sort of thing that ADSA can do, and I think does really well, is highlighting these areas. And in fact, many of those conversations ended up in products that ADSA sort of convenes. Right? So the community, sort of under ADSA's convening power, we bring together members of the community to develop sort of key products that we think would be useful for the community. So for example, industry partnership use cases, a list of data science and AI degree and certificate programs. And I think I have a slide here also talking about the Ethos project, which came out of that ethics panel. So this is actually a resource for the community and how to think about ethics in data science. And I will say that when I was a program officer at NIH, I used this resource. It was very helpful. Here's another highlight around the career guidebook. So again, these are things that ADSA can help provide. So what I hope to show is just that ADSA is a sort of growing community around data science and artificial intelligence. We sort of are growing the network that has been primarily based around academia into other types of research organizations. I think we also have tentacles into many different types of fields. And I think that the things that are surfacing as of interest to our community are very much aligned with the efforts and the priorities of this meeting in terms of, making sure that our workforce pipeline is ready, making sure that our institutions have the resources that they need in order to train the next generation, and that we're making that connection from training all the way through to the research missions and potential, workforce needs as well. So with that, thank you, and I'm really honored to be speaking to you on behalf of ADSA. And if you have any other questions, you can contact Michaela.